it being at least 6:30, let's bring this meeting of the Select Board to order. Roll call vote. Becky,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Ann is here.
John is here.
There's going to be a short delay while we make sure we have copies of the materials we need. And while we're doing that, I'm going to explain a little bit about the format of this and the format is a question and answer. The idea is to explain the 14 articles on the warrant, what impact they'll have on the town, what impacts they might have on the town, but not to debate the merits of the articles. The town meeting is the right place to debate the merits, so that everyone who is involved and able to vote can hear the discussion. So I will, if ordinarily I say when we're taking public comment, that public comment is limited to 2 minutes. I don't think that's going to be necessary this time because I don't think many of us have a 2-minute question. Questions should be short. I would prefer that people give one question at a time. I'll try to get around to everybody as many times as necessary to get all of your questions. The other piece of general business is that the first 10 articles on the warrant are proposed by the Select Board. The other 4, numbers 11 to 14, were created by citizen petition. But there were a series of complications. One of the petitions came up 1 signature short due to somebody forgetting to re-register when moving next door. So the Select Board decided that that petition had been put forth with good faith and with an adequate number of signatures, and that we would put it on the warrant on from our own hand, rather than say, sorry, one signature short and you're out. Then someone came to Greg and the Select Board and said, the process that you use for handling citizen petitions is not correct. And at that point, we decided that we would put all 4 of the citizen petitions on the ballot as presented by the Select Board, so that we wouldn't have a fight on town meeting floor about whether something was properly presented, given that there was some ambiguity in the bylaw that described it. So we now have copies of the warrants in front of us, and let's start. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Sam.
Alan is also on.
Alan is also on. Could we somehow get this to the room? Well, I guess as long as I'm talking, it's going to be showing me. The first article changes the date of the annual town meeting. And John, you'll be moving it.
I will be moving it. I don't know if this is a fairly straightforward article. Really, the challenges are the budget process takes a while, and some of the last numbers in the budget come in March 31st, April 1st or so. Anyway, the first Monday in April is a struggle. We thought maybe 2 weeks or so more would be fine, but now we're starting to get into Patriots Day. So we moved it to the fourth Monday in April. That's really the driving issue and the only issue.
Does anyone have a question? Yes.
After we had the problem this year with
Name
getting
and
stuff,
address.
Tom Keogh, 20 Lincoln Street. After we had the problem this year with getting the stuff from Daily Printing, it became kind of a crunch to get the packets put together. In fact, we used a lot of members of the DPW to come to the Scout House and put the packets together. And then at that point, there was some discussion going on about changing town reports, whether town reports would be done electronically, or people could choose to pick up the packet someplace. This date is good to move it back, but if this date stays, then the weekend for delivering the town reports is Patriots' Day. And that's also school vacation. So I'm just throwing that out for people's consideration, because if you're gonna have the scouts deliver them, I'd be lucky to get a third of the scouts, because the families are all,
Okay, fair comment.
okay.
Greg, is there anything we can do to get the town reports out 2 weeks early?
Right, so the idea would be to get those delivered prior to the Patriots weekend, so the weekend before.
Yeah, a few people had a discussion about maybe having people sign up to get them delivered, and then have other places where there would be packets available for people to pick up. You know, we have to put 10 at the memorial school, 10 here, 10 at the library, 10 at the fire station, 10 at the police station. What happens if you decide to put 100 at each one of those sites, and people could go and pick them up? I'm just
Okay,
throwing out options, that's
Yeah,
all.
I will say that when discussion about the difficult timing came up and we were looking at the Patriots' Day Monday, that is to say that if we were prepared the week before that, Greg felt that that was probably enough time. So if we still target that time, in fact, there are 2 weeks for delivery rather than 1. So we should be able to get this all together before the Patriots' Day weekend crunch hits.
I just wanted to get it out on the table.
But you know,
I
everything
know you
is.
don't like surprises on the town meeting floor.
Everything focuses on when's the due date regardless of how much time you have, and so that's gonna be a challenge.
I think Alan wants to say something.
yeah.
I totally agree with Tom about no surprises on town meeting floor.
If you could hit, the gentleman on the bench, if you could hit the multiple squares on that.
Like actually press the TV or?
Yeah, press
Where
the
the
TV. Okay, that's two.
I can help it.
Okay,
Better? Do you want like the full grid?
I'd like the full grid, yeah.
I think Alan's the only one with his camera on.
Okay. Is there,
That's true, Al is the only one with his camera on.
are there any non-camera hands up? Okay, in that case, Article 2 is, to pay for enhanced security on our computer network. And Kathy?
Yeah, so you may have read in the Cricket a few weeks back that the town of Middleton had a security breach on their computer network. So we partner closely with other towns in the area through the Danvers Information Technology Collaborative, and it's been recommended that we make some enhancements to our computer network to as a proactive measure to prevent a similar breach. But also we would be including in this funding what's called a penetration test. So you basically hire people to come in and try and hack your system, and that really uncovers vulnerabilities that you might not be aware of. So that's the purpose of this funding in Article 2.
Are there any questions? Okay. Article 3 is to fund the town's share of an operational review of the school district. Don?
Yes. This particular article was put on the warrant because, as probably most folks in town know, the school district and the school committee are struggling to pull together a budget for the coming year. And it's been a struggle for them. About a month or so ago, the school committee met with the committees of finance and the school boards of the two towns to discuss the progress or lack thereof that they were making to try and get to a school budget for 2024. The gap is over $1 million. And we're looking for new ideas, and having new people come to the problem can oftentimes reveal new angles and of efficiency and new ideas. So we thought we would go out for a consultant. That was one thing that I think pretty much everyone in the room agreed would be a good idea. Let's see if we can get some new ideas in. So this appropriates up to $80,000 for that effort from Manchester. We expect that the consultancy will probably be in the vicinity of $100,000. So we're not expecting that we're having to spend all 80. Manchester will be responsible for about 2/3 of the cost, and Essex will be responsible for about 1/3. So the money spent will be, as I say, in total around 100. A consultant would be expected to be hired by the end of the year and would provide results within a couple of months. So the results that do come in and the comments they have would be comments that could be used in helping to hopefully close the gap that we have for the upcoming school budget year, which is for 2025, I guess.
Yes, Mary.
Hi, Mary Foley, 1 Pulaski Drive. Just for clarity, how did you come up with the 2/3 and 1/3? And then why would this not be coming out of the school budget?
There was some discussion of whether it would come out of the school budget or not. Of course, the school budget is a composite of what the towns have. And the towns are going to control this at this point rather than the school committee. So it's the town money that's going in there. The 2/3, 1/3 split is largely the guideline or the split between the two towns in terms of what they contribute to the school district and your.
It's the
probably-
apportionment form,
Yeah.
it's the apportionment formula for non-instructional school expenses. And it just seemed like a reasonable way to apportion those costs.
Thank you.
Nate Berkowitz, 22 Friend Street. So that was one of my questions, so thanks for clarifying the 2/3, 1/3. I'm also curious if there's any obligations that Essex has in going through this exercise, given the fact that I feel like we're in this position largely because of their town's feelings about the school district, how it should be funded. Is it possible that we could go through this exercise, we could spend additional funds and then still be in the same place that we've been in? And I guess in part of that too is, one of the things that we did in this last cycle was we kicked the can down the road for next spring. And I'm concerned now, just hearing kind of some of those dates of when we'd be getting feedback back from the consultants, would we then be in a situation again where we don't have enough time to make a decision that everybody's happy with?
All of that is possible. I mean, these are challenges. They're not coming up with answers. And all of those folks in the school district, on the committee in the district, they're very close to these numbers. They're just about fresh ideas anyway as to how to deal with this. It's going to be a tight time. There's no question. If there are new ideas, they will be coming down in February, March, and that's going to be kind of tight. But I hope that they're making progress as we speak relative to when we had the meeting, which was a month or so ago.
I know I personally was, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, I was personally surprised to see that we're looking to spend more money on this exercise, given the fact that the whole point is that we can't even meet our current obligations.
Mm-hmm.
Craig?
And I think part of the hope is that, let's say the study reveals that the school district is operating as efficiently as possible. Essex sees that as a way to help sell the need for a potential override then, if that is a third party's opinion, to try to push back on some of the perceptions that certainly surfaced last year that there are inefficiencies. So I think some folks from Essex see this as a way to possibly help with that argument.
Yes,
Mary Palermo, 2 Parsons Lane. In the past, the school district has always talked about hiring somebody to write grants. Has that position been filled? Have they written any grants, and have we received any money from these grants?
that's way beyond what I was hoping to
That's a
cover
question
tonight.
for Monday.
But,
Okay.
I'm not,
They have received grants, I don't know the details.
Well,
don't know about
in
the-
the past, it's been Essex who's written the grants and gotten the monies, not Manchester, so, there's been some push. When my daughter was in school, she's been out for a while now, but, that always was an issue that would come up, but it never really seemed to go anywhere in town. It's almost like it was kind of beneath us to apply for a grant, I don't know if that's still the case.
I often attend school committee meetings, I would be there now if I weren't here. And grants are, they have a list of things that they're looking at now, and finding grants is certainly on that list. Unfortunately, so are bake sales.
Oh, no, I know, and that's why there's always been this talk about that if we hire somebody who can actually write the grant, instead of just finding the grant and saying, oh, look, this could be money that we get, and write it and apply for it.
Thank you.
You don't know, okay.
They're talking about that tonight, and we will get information when we can. Is there any other questions on? Okay, is there anyone, Mary Foley is here. The next, Article 4 is presented by the planning board, and it changes the limitations on auxiliary dwelling units in outbuildings. And
So, yeah, this proposes to amend the use table, table 4.2. There's a section E7 allows currently outbuildings, existing outbuildings to be used as a dwelling unit. But there's a note attached to that, note 13, that says that the occupant of that dwelling unit has to be an employee of the property owner. And so this proposal would remove that stipulation, that limitation. So it would remove requiring it to be an employee, and that it would be a dwelling unit that could be used. It does also add then a prohibition against using such a dwelling unit for short-term rentals. So that's the proposed change.
And do we know who is here representing the planning? Sue Philbrick is on as well. Is there someone designated to,
Yeah, I don't know who.
from the planning board?
If either Mary or Susan or wants to speak to it, but
both. Mary, would you like to speak to this, or would you like Susan to speak first and you can respond?
Do you have any questions? I mean, I think Greg summarized what the proposal is. I'm in the minority view on the planning board on this one. I do not support it.
Sue? Sue Philbrick, if you could speak to this, would you speak to this?
I don't see any questions.
Okay.
Well, she's prosecuting her, it doesn't matter, no worries there. All right.
Article 5 is to pay a prior year's fiscal debt of $916. This is a slightly unusual article in that it requires a 90% vote of the town meeting. And it's an unusual amount. And it's an unusual circumstance because ordinarily when we have a debt, the warrant lists to whom we owe the money. This money is owed to a number of different people who got parking tickets that were wrongly adjudicated. So we're paying back parking tickets for a number of people.
Excuse me, Ann, I thought I saw a pop-up chat from.
It was Sue who said she couldn't get her mic
Oh,
to work, so I don't know if she wanted to say anything.
ignoring
but-
us.
Yeah, she just couldn't get the mic to work, so.
So basically, we will need to get a probably a unanimous vote from the town meeting. And we will pay back those people who got parking tickets for regulation that was propagated incorrectly.
Sarah
Yes.
Pierce has her hand up.
Yes, Sarah?
Hi, thank you. Sarah Pierce, 9 Front Street. I wasn't sure if we were able to ask questions about the ADU because it moved on, but if Sue could answer, I do have a question. If she could just give a brief overview of exactly the definition of an ADU and like basic parameters of what you need as a resident or homeowner to have one and what it really is and how it works.
She can't get her microphone to work, and she's not, we don't have her as a representative tonight.
But to
Oh,
answer
can
the
she
question,
put it in the chat?
I can take a stab at it.
Would you like
So,
me, I can
Mary-
answer
Mary-
questions.
Sure.
yeah, so
Um,
Mary, go ahead.
So so for an accessory structure, it's just what we would require for an accessory structure on your piece of land, so that the side and rear setbacks are much smaller than if it was a dwelling unit. There's no stated off-street parking requirements in the bylaw, so it would bump over to the parking table, which just requires one additional off-street parking. There's no limitation to size except for what the size of an accessory structure is, which would be 1.5 stories. So there's no limit to, length or floor area. There's no limit to bedrooms or bathrooms. And this one is unique in that our existing ADU bylaw for within a residence is just in single resident districts. This could be in any district but the LCD. I think that covers it.
So it does require a special permit. So it does go through a public hearing process with the ZBA. And so the only thing that is being proposed, so it's currently on the books as Mary described, and then it has to go through the special permitting process. What the proposal here does is simply remove that limitation of employee as being the only occupant possible.
And adds the restriction on the short-term rental.
And then adds the short-term rental restriction, yeah.
So this is already an allowed use. It's not a modification of what those guidelines are. It's simply trying to allow for family members or,
So what the ZBA has found, that there are a lot of grandmothers employed
yeah.
as
Chauffeur.
as chauffeurs or something, as a way to get around that employee designation. So,
But there are no changes to what's already written for the guidelines? Because
Well,
you
there's
did
not-
just say that there's nothing,
There are really no guidelines for what requirements for the accessory structure. I think what prevented more of these being occupied is the employee requirement, and now this could be occupied by anybody. So in my opinion, that will make it easier to permit detached garages, accessory structures, stables, sheds, if it's converted to a dwelling unit.
yeah, it's a relaxing a bit of the restriction, but it still has to go through the special permit, and it only is applicable to existing structure. So this doesn't apply to a proposed new structure.
right, and this, Sue just chimed in and said that as well. It applies to existing accessory dwellings. It's not giving carte blanche for new ones to be built. And the ZBA requested that the planning board make that change.
Morgan?
Morgan Evans, 20 Boardman Ave. Existing since when? Something that's 100 years ago, something, 10 years from now.
If you build a garage today and 10 years from now you want to put your sister-in-law in it, or anyone, then,
You could go through a special permitting process.
Like one permitting process to build it, and then immediately I could turn it into ADU residence, essentially, a detached residence.
But again, you'd have to get ZBA approval. for that.
Right, so it's 3 steps. I
So
build.
there's no year limit, it's,
No back and forth, please.
Through the,
so there, that was one of the, issues that I saw, was that there is existing, could mean you built it yesterday, and you applied for a permit tomorrow.
yes, please.
And it doesn't have to be an existing, I'm sorry, Mary Palermo, 2 Parsons Lane. It doesn't have to be an existing residence. It can be any outbuilding that can be converted into a residence with special permit.
Correct. Which is what the bylaw says today. We're not changing that aspect of it.
And somebody's asked another question. Do you want questions going through the chat, or how would you like
No,
them?
I would like questions
If somebody's able to
if they are
unmute.
able to unmute and ask their question, that will be part of the recording. The chat
Right.
is not recorded,
Right.
so whatever comes through the chat will not be available to anybody who looks at this afterward, if anybody does.
Mhm.
Hi, this is Peter Morton from 128 Bridge Street on the virtual call. And my question was, what is the definition of the short-term rental, or the length of the short-term rental?
So it references the definition that the state has for short-term rentals, which basically prohibits, so short-term rentals, any rental through a typical booking agency. And then we also reference the town's definition, which is much more restrictive. The town's definition of short-term rentals is 6 days or less.
Yes.
Mary Palermo, 2 Parsons Lane. Once the structure is converted into a residence, how does the numbering of the residence occur? Like for 911, the 911 initiative, each building has to have its own address. Does it become like an A, a B?
A or B or an R for rear,
Okay.
something like that, yeah.
So it doesn't get its own separate number. It has to somehow still stay attached to the main.
Typically, yeah, typically.
Any other ADU questions?
I just wanted to follow up on the end of that is, so it doesn't
This is
have to
Sarah
be,
Pierce, yes.
definitely does not have to be a family member.
Right,
Correct.
And are you allowed more, you said more than one accessory dwelling unit per residence, or is it just one?
It's not specified in the bylaw. So it'd be up to
So
the
you could have, if you
ZBA.
had like 3 outbuildings, you could have 3?
In theory, if you got permission from the ZBA, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you so much.
But that's already, you can already do that.
Correct.
That's not a change to the bylaw. This is simply, and Mary, correct me if I'm not getting this right, it's merely the removing the limitation of it being an employee. Because there's no other substantive changes.
correct, though I don't think we have anything that we've ever approved that's more than 1 employee per lot.
Thank you.
thank you. Are there any questions on the parking ticket article? Okay, the next is the fire department would like another vehicle. Becky?
And this is, the fire chief feels that for both primarily safety as well as visibility, having the fire department out and about that because we don't have a full complement of our fire vehicles, and if we are responding to all of our calls, we don't have an extra vehicle to assist our neighbors, which is a mutual agreement.
It's, I think, a little bit more complicated than that, because we want to have 2 advanced life support
Yes,
ambulance, vehicles.
vehicles.
We have 1 ambulance, we have been using engine 1, which is a pumper. It's got ALS equipment on it, but it's a big truck,
Mm-hmm.
and it's difficult for 1 person to move. So if our regular ambulance is off and we get a medical call,
Another call.
this SUV would be equipped to respond and could respond with 1 driver. So-
Yes, thank you, that was.
And it also will help in the case where one of our neighbors needs medical personnel. So currently, what we would have to do if the ambulance was out, we would take our pumper and go to Essex or Wenham or wherever. And the chief feels that it was much more appropriate and reasonable to keep our fire trucks in town and send out the advanced life support equipment with a paramedic in a more rational.
And the chief is on the line. if you're
Okay.
in-
And I think that, to simplify things, is that the ambulance we have is a transport.
Yeah.
All right, so on a lot of mutual aid calls, we don't need to send our only transport vehicle out of town, where we can send the SUV and keep, the chief's goal is to keep the town covered with an operating ambulance, transport ambulance. And this will take care of that, as well as keep us from trying to tool a pumper truck around through the narrow streets of Manchester with 1 driver. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Does
Yes, yeah.
it does to me anyway.
Yeah. Chief
Yes,
Cleary
ma'am.
wanted to chime in?
You mean McNeely?
Oh my God, it's my turn, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sorry,
Oh, thank
sorry,
you.
Jake.
All right, Jake, you want to respond to him? No.
I didn't hear the question, I heard what Brian had just said, and that's exactly the correct answer. Is we're trying to keep our transporting ambulance in the town of Manchester whenever possible. Doesn't mean it won't go out if requested as a transporting unit, but it will be drastically decreased and then increase the likelihood it's in town if a resident or visitor needs that piece of apparatus.
And one final thought is that this vehicle could be purchased from unused funds in the fire equipment fund.
Appropriate 1.5.
We appropriate.
Yeah, so
Go
there'll
ahead.
be leftover monies in the ladder truck appropriation to fund this.
Does anyone have any questions?
I don't see any hands.
Okay,
Thank you, chief.
yes.
Have a good night.
Mhm.
And Article 7, which moves some money between salary accounts and contracted services. Kathy?
Yes, so we have,
Our numbers person.
when we planned the fiscal year '24 budget, there were 2 line items where we thought the work was going to be performed by employees, but in fact, some of that work is going to be performed by contractors or consultants. So, for example, we had planned to hire a conservation agent, but we wound up with a partnership with a neighboring town, and so we are paying for that person. We need to pay for that person out of professional services line item instead of the employee account. And similarly, in the planning department, we had an interim town planner, Betsy Ware. She is no longer here. So until we hire a new planner, we need to supplement the work with a contractor. So we need to pay that person from a professional services account, not an employee account. So there's no addition to the budget here. It's just we need to pay these contractors or consultants from the proper line item in the budget. We're just moving money from one place to another.
This online? Well, this is going to be an easy town meeting, I can tell.
Oh, yeah.
Did you just jinx us? I hope.
I think I did.
Yes, you did.
7.
Oh,
No candy for her.
no more candy, Ann.
Yep. Okay, Article 8, which is to lease land for the community center from Harbor's Point Associates to the community. Brian?
Yes, just to summarize as best I can. The town was approached. There was a landlord-tenant dispute between two private parties. The town was approached to try to intercede on behalf of the MCC, which we did. Manchester Community Center, okay. We have come to an agreement with the landlord for up to 10 years, and now, but we can't sign a lease without approval from the town. So any kind of land or lease agreement has to be approved by town meeting. So this is just to authorize the town to enter into a lease agreement with the Harbor's Point Associates. How we got here is irrelevant. We're here.
Yes.
So just quickly, just to add on, so moving forward, then the idea is to expand the use of the building in addition to the traditional uses that community center, MCC, has provided, hoping to continue those, but also to expand to include public restrooms, potential office for the harbor master, traditional meeting space, and other programming. So the idea is to expand the use of the building, in addition, as I say, in addition to the community center's traditional uses, to add some additional town uses.
And to that point, the town would then enter into a secondary sublet agreement with the MCC.
Right.
So there shouldn't be, depending on timing, there should be very little disruption of business if everything goes to plan.
Alida Bryant has her hand up.
Yes, Alida?
Good evening, thank you, everyone. So how
Address,
does the-
please, Alida.
Sorry, 57 Old Essex Road. How does the MCC board feel about this idea?
They came to us. Well, I'll answer real quickly and then Greg can expand.
We have a member of the board here.
Oh, yeah, but I just remember, they came to us, okay, so we did as was requested. Beyond that, I don't know.
So, obviously, Patrick can speak for himself and the board. I think I won't speak for you, go ahead and speak for the board. I think we're all working towards a resolution that'll work for everybody.
Patrick Meehan, 384 Summer Street. Yep, we're still working with the town on Article 8 to preserve the history and the services that the community center provides. So it's, we'd say it's still a work in progress at this point.
And how does this relate to the article that's coming up in the discussion about the town, asking the town to take the property by eminent domain?
Please.
Okay. It's another way for us to protect the community center. The two articles were brought at different times. So currently, right now, they're both on the article, on the warrant, sorry. And we're trying to figure out the best way to proceed.
So it may be that if voters approve Article 8, there may be a sentiment that it's not necessary to do Article 11 at this time. As things evolve over the next few days, that's, I think, a possibility. And that, in essence, the Article 11 approach, which is an outright purchase or taking, is a bit of a fallback position that may not be necessary at this time.
Okay. And what is the town's view of how much control they're going to impose on the MCC board in terms of making those 2 small restrooms public and perhaps trying to put a harbor master office there or other ideas that have been floated? Obviously, they're just ideas at this point. But is there an understanding, or is it going to remain true that the MCC board has the authority over the use of that building, or will it become more town controlled?
So there'd be certainly an additional level of town control. It would be a collaborative effort. And for example, you mentioned the restrooms. There probably would need to be some reconfiguration of those restrooms and access to them to allow dual uses so that there's not interfering of one use with another. So there may be some modification to the building down the road to best accommodate that. And yeah, scheduling and coordination of that will have to be done between the 2 entities.
Okay, and one last question, if I may. The land that is underneath the building, is there a plot plan? Do we know exactly, does it follow the contours of the foundation of the building? Or is it larger than that to allow for expansion of the community center?
So that's not well defined at this point, that we have been able to ascertain. Those are issues for a later day to try to resolve, I think.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Becky?
Would it be helpful, do you think, if we were to make a few clarifications about the building, ownership of the building today, ownership of the property, ownership of the building come November 30, the end of November, if it's not moved or planned on moved? I think that some people might not understand that.
Sure. Again, Patrick can chime in as well. So currently, as of today, the building is owned by the nonprofit Manchester Community Center. The land on which it sits is owned by the condominium association. It's common land as part of the condominium. And so, under the terms of the current lease, when that lease is terminated, the community center has the choice of either retaining ownership by moving the building, or if not, then ownership is relinquished and is transferred to the association, Harbor Point Associates. So obviously, from the community center's point of view, that's an asset they prefer not to lose. And if they could move it longer term, I think that's probably their first choice. But it's difficult to do that in the time frame that they have. But it's not impossible. So they will have to make that decision come the end of the week in terms of notification to Harbor's Point, whether it's that option is going to be exercised.
Just for clarity, Greg, by when must the community center notify Harbors Point?
They have until the 22nd, I believe, 10 days after the lease termination.
Okay, so the community center must notify Harbors Point by November 22nd, and then
If they say we're going to move the building,
Yes, how much time do
they
they-
have 3 months.
they have 3 months.
to
So the whole process, if if the community center wanted to take advantage of that and move the building, et cetera, the whole process would be around 3.5 months.
Correct.
Okay, so basically, the likelihood of an eminent domain being exercised in a 3.5 month period is
I would say 0 to none.
unheard of, right?
That would be.
And is it fair to say that if Article 8 does not pass, the community center is completely on its own for the next 3 to 4 months to figure something out, and if they can't move it, it goes away?
Yes, yes.
So it's the only short-term option to save the community center currently known?
That's currently known, yes. Yes. I think that's fair to say. That from a short-term perspective, the lease option is the most viable. If there's a way to do a lease in conjunction with working with Harbor Points in terms of Harbor's Point in terms of extending the time frame for moving the building, that's something that's a discussion that we hope to have.
How, do we know, and I'm just curious, do we know how many members are, and I don't even know if it's relevant, but Harbors Point certainly has more than a couple of people, right? I mean, this is a large group,
I
right?
think there's somewhere between 17 and 20 owners.
Okay, all right.
I mean, when you look at the retail space, but the condominium, there's the office building itself is an individual condominiums as well.
And they all,
They're all part of it.
they're all
members.
part of it, okay, all right. Thank you.
And oh, by the way, so isn't the pharmacy is also part of the association.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other hands.
Yes.
Mary Palermo, 2 Parsons Lane. Do we have any idea what they would be looking for in terms of a lease agreement and rent from the town?
They've indicated they would it would be similar to what the deal is with the community center currently, a below market rate.
And is the, sorry.
That's fine.
And is the community club community center not willing to pay this rent? Is that why they're being kind
No.
of removed off the land? Did
No.
they have a lease? Did their lease expire? Was it?
So they've had a month-to-month lease for the last 3 years. And the Harbors Point has decided to exercise the option to terminate. The indications to us, to town, has been they wanted to see a higher utilization of the building for the below market rate that was being offered.
So they had an existing lease where they were offering a below market rate, and they're going to ask those tenants to leave, but continue to have a below market rate with a lease with the town.
With increased utilization of the building.
Well, with a requested increase, doesn't mean that it will be increased.
Well, unless there's something in the lease agreement, so I think that's gotta be negotiated.
I think part of the negotiations has been discussions of what the plan would be. And then again, and I think Greg articulated what the plan is. I mean, the town really could use public restrooms, and the current landlord has embraced that. The town could use a temporary, or at least the harbor master's office on this side of the tracks. If you've tried to get across the tracks lately, in case of emergency, we got the harbor master on one side and the boats on the other, so it makes sense. And Just, you know,
When the building is not in use by the community
right,
center,
the town,
it would be available, some of the rooms would be available for overflow meeting space.
and I think Parks and Rec could probably expand some of their offerings as well.
Alida has,
Actually,
Nate Berkowitz, 22 Friend. I'm remembering a couple years ago having, hearing some dialogue around Reed Park being a venue for public restrooms in the Harbor Master Office. Is that off the table? Where did that go? And why are we talking about putting them here? Is that just so that we can have more use in this space and make this work?
Well, so we're not at the point of offering those others. That other possibility isn't really, there's no proposal yet to do that. So this is a way to provide that service immediately, more or less. Obviously, we have to sign a few pieces of paper and work a few things out, but nonetheless.
Okay, but if I'm thinking about it correctly, though, we could, there is an option to do those things in Reed Park where we would not be paying rent to anybody, but this is an option where we could do this at the community center and we would be paying rent to somebody.
Right.
If I'm thinking about it correctly.
And it may be instead of the Reed Park option.
The other thing too, I think, is that, excuse me, is that I think part of the Reed Park option was taken away when the MBTA built that big transformer, which I think was the site where the plan was to put the Welcome Center there.
but
Okay.
also, are we talking about pros and cons? Is that,
Getting off track.
I think,
yeah, I think we're getting a little.
Yeah, no, I think, but that's, I mean, that's one of the drawbacks now.
The short-term issue is making sure that the community center has a place to continue its function. We would not be entering, I think we would not be entering into this if we have no plans to enter into this, ignoring the community center. Our interest right now is to get the community center working and then to get some benefits. And the public restrooms, yeah, having them near the boats would be nice, but most boats have private facilities. So having them near the shops and
The train.
the train
Is a good thing.
has some. Alida, do you have?
Thank you, Alida Bryant, 57 Old Essex Road. Just in the interest of anticipating town meeting questions, what business is it of the landlord for the activity level in the Manchester Community Center? And I don't expect an answer from you guys tonight. It's just a question that is raised, in my mind. What business is it of them, what their tenants do with their building? And I do see how the town could potentially benefit in a small way. But just to say, the square footage of that building is not as big as the aspirations that the town may have for it. But that's just my opinion, so. But yeah, these are the issues that I think I can hear on town meeting floor, so that's why I bring it up. Thanks.
May I just, Alida, what we've been told is that the owners of the property would like to see more use, and they have been subsidizing the Manchester Community Center for many years, and apparently do not feel that their generosity here is being as well utilized as they would like it to be. So in terms of their interest in the use, they own the land and they're being very generous and they want to see more being done. The
Well,
town,
they could also-
let me finish please, Alida. And the town coming in, we were asked to help. The town was asked. And in doing so, assisting a private nonprofit entity that is not town related. Okay, this has nothing to do with the town. We value it. Is there a way we can come up with a situation where the town can do something that benefits the town as well as assists this non-town entity, non-profit entity. So that's really what it boils down to. And the owners of the land, it's their land.
Well said. But did they ask the community center if they would be willing to pay more rent and pay market rent?
Just for.
You know, we don't know, I'm not
This is
asking
the
you
town
that, but
did not initiate an effort to intervene between a tenant, a landlord and a tenant. That's entirely a private business situation. And much as we would like to have waved a wand over it and caused it all to go away, we don't have that one.
right, got it.
Thank you.
Sarah Pierce has her hand
Sarah.
up.
Sarah Pierce?
Yes, sorry, thank you. Sarah Pierce, 9 Front Street. Alita did answer my first question about the usage, but if you actually took the time to look at the calendars that are posted on the community center website, their monthly calendars are chock full of extremely important programs. And just want to state a couple things. As well as the building being used for venues. I know our own family has used the community center for birthday parties and events, fundraising, Girl Scouts, a multitude of different. But I just want to reiterate that, you know, the town keeps consistently, especially Becky keeps saying it's not a town function. May not be a town responsibility, but it's definitely a function of the town, and it's a community center. So it is very important to the community. And I think
that's exactly why we're here now.
Exactly.
Right. Which is why I would just like to point out one more thing, that the way it's laid out now seems very confusing to the public as to what they will actually be voting on, because you're asking the public to replace the community center with one office space and public restrooms that would take over the use of community functions on an unknown schedule. And I agree with the fact that I don't really think it's the landlord's business as to what a tenant does, as long as they're a good tenant, and et cetera.
Thank you for your comments.
But I won't go down that road. I just want to make that comment and question.
Incorporate your concerns as we prepare for town meeting.
Thank you.
I appreciate your articulating them. Anyone else on Article 8? Article 9 is related to Article 5, which was parking fines. And this one is Kathy's. It changes the bylaws regarding parking.
Sure. So I'll give this a shot and may ask for some help from Greg, but at a high level, what this article does, it removes some operational details, that's my phrase, from the bylaws. I don't know if we can close those doors or something, I'm getting.
Probably not.
We can't.
It removes some operational details from the bylaws regarding parking, okay? And it clarifies the language. We got into some issues over the spring when there were some parking tickets that were given out, as Ann indicated, incorrectly, or they were incorrectly adjudicated, I should say. They weren't given out incorrectly, but there was confusion because the bylaws didn't match the operational procedures. And so upon investigating why these tickets were not properly adjudicated, we uncovered that the bylaw has too much operational detail, and then when we wanted to make a few changes for efficiency reasons, we didn't realize that the bylaws were being impacted. So the intent here is to simplify the bylaw and leave the operational details to the town. So Greg, can you, what I think could use some clarification is operationally, how is this different?
Right, so currently the bylaw specifies, for example, that the resident sticker for your vehicle goes on the rear driver's side window. So in today's cars, most of those rear windows are heavily tinted, so you put your sticker there, it's difficult to see it. So the police a couple of years ago said, you know what, it really would be better if we had those stickers on the front windshield on the lower left-hand corner. But that's inconsistent with the bylaw. So that's just a detail that would be changed. So instead of the bylaw specifying, the select board in conjunction with staff would make those determinations after public review and public meeting as to where stickers are supposed to go. And similarly, the bylaw currently lists all the roads where resident-only parking is allowed. And so if the road hasn't been on that list and someone said, geez, why can't I have resident-only parking on my street? We would have to wait until a town meeting to change the bylaw. So again, this proposes to remove those listings from the bylaw, and it's an annual list that the select board would approve after public hearing. So it streamlines what the bylaw says, and it makes it operationally easier to make some adjustments as things evolve.
Are there questions?
Christina.
Hmm?
Christina Delisi.
Christina,
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. So, Christina Delizio, 6 Lincoln Avenue. I have a few comments about this. I went through every agenda item since the Springtime meeting, and there is no mention of removing streets from the bylaw or any discussions of parking stickers. There is one mention of a agenda item to resident sticker enforcement, that's much different than what you are proposing in the bylaw. I am on a resident-only parking street, and it's very concerning that you're scratching these streets off and then putting them into nowhere land without any kind of plan to these residents that live on these streets. I mean, there's no kind of proposal to me. If you were going to do this, there should be some a document that says this is what we're going to do going forward and whatnot. But it appears in my mind that you're just eradicating resident-only parking with now, do we need to go apply if we want to keep our resident-only status? So I don't understand where this even was discussed, what problem we're solving. It seems like we're solving a problem with the parking clerk or the clerk's department that didn't actually read, I'm sorry to sound harsh, but didn't read the actual bylaw. And then I don't actually see anywhere where the FinCom is chimed in. We used to pay for parking tickets, resident stickers, and they were a hefty amount. So
Christina, that's not true.
gone.
We didn't ever pay for resident stickers. We paid for beach stickers.
Okay, we paid for beach stickers and now they're given to us. So I used to buy for 2. Now I have 5 cards.
Okay, so
We
let's not
now
get
have
into
5
beach stickers.
I'm not finished. I would like to know where the FinCom's report is on the stickers. How much are we paying now for stickers when we used to be, I mean, there was actually income coming in and now there's income going out. So where is this FinCom report? My understanding of the bylaw.
The FinCom's
there should be a
report is that
of
they have no recommendation, they take no position on this article. That is their report. That
So
is
where
good.
is the information that they were provided to give us this data?
They're not required to post their data. They're required to post their recommendation, and that is what they have done.
So what did you give them for
bylaw-
information? How much are they
The
spending?
the resident parking, there's no proposed changes. The select board will adopt the existing list, and that'll be
Well, it
posted.
doesn't say that here. It does not say that here.
Yeah, so Greg, the operational clarification I think that would be helpful is, since the list of streets are not going to be, we're recommending that they not be in the bylaw.
Right.
Once we, where will they be operationally so that people can see what the resident-only parking stickers?
Sure, those will be posted on the website every year.
So we're trying to make it easier to update the list by removing them from the bylaw, but we are not in any way
There's no
changing
proposal to change that list.
where the
Well,
resident-only
that goes both
parking
ways,
is.
Kathy.
Right.
If it's easier to update it, it's easier to
let's-
take them off. So I don't see the protections here at all.
And I still
That's
don't
fine,
see
Christina.
where the
Vote-
financial
Okay.
aspect is.
vote into it. That's
We are
fine.
going back and forth. At this point, I would like to have
Well, I
questions
haven't
both
yet
of you.
finished answering my question. You're not letting me finish, actually. I thought this was time to ask questions.
Yes.
You keep interrupting me, and I would like to
At the
know
beginning of the
where
meeting
the
that you asked
financial
one
report.
question and then we would come back to you. But what I
I'm
don't
asking
want
where the
is
financial
three
data
people
is
talking at
For
once.
this warrant article.
Now, Christina, please continue with your next question.
My ultimate question was, where's the financial analysis that, how much are we spending now in stickers and versus what we were taking in 2 years ago?
What? That doesn't have,
That's not,
The
that doesn't have anything to do with this
John
particular.
or Greg, one or the other. John.
All right. Christina, that's not really relevant to this article. This article is just really changing where the decisions or where the rules are going to be adjudicated or reviewed going forward. It has nothing to do with the money that has been collected or will be collected. All it's doing is that instead of all of this information being posted in the bylaws, it's now going to be handled by the select board or by various departments that would report to the select board when they want to change something. So instead of changing things at a town meeting, it will go through the various department, probably the clerk in most instances, and then come to the select board and be reviewed. And that can be done on a more timely basis, that we only have a couple of town meetings a year, sometimes just one, but the select board meets all the time. And if there's some change that's got to be done, that can be done in a more timely basis. Right now, no changes are expected in terms of, other than where the decisions are going to be made. But there is no change in terms of any of the streets or the monies that are involved here. It's all the same.
Greg, would you like to expand on that at all?
No, I'm good.
Christina, do you have further questions?
Well, I feel like it's not, this warrant article doesn't state those things because the town had actually implemented in opposition to what the bylaws already said 2 years ago. So you're trying to cover your tracks. So I think you're trying to play catch up, which I think it's not fair to the residents that you're actually making it seem that this isn't, has nothing to do with that. Well, it actually did. It did 2 years ago, and you didn't follow up with it then. You just kind of went with your own plan in violation of our bylaws. So now you're trying to take these things out to make it easier to, adhere to the things that you've been doing against the bylaws for the last 2 years. That's my understanding.
Thank you very much. We will certainly take your comments into consideration as we're preparing to discuss this article at town meeting floor. Yes, Mary.
Mary Foley, 1 Pulaski Drive. So it looks like you're striking out Schedule A, which lists the streets. I don't know if it's streets just for resident parking or not, I'm not clear, but it lists the streets, especially that smaller, narrow streets that have parking on just one side. So if you remove the schedule and we don't have anything in the bylaws and people are now parking on both sides, I know for particular streets, if you park on both sides, mine included, you can't get a car down the road. So if there's you're removing the schedule without a replacement, and then you're saying to be decided by the select board after a public hearing, I guess my recommendation would be, if you're going to adopt a new schedule or adopt a new policy, have that policy before you remove something and then leave things open for a period of time. I'm just finding that to be a safety issue.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. Brian.
Operationally, we're not removing any signs, right? Then the signs aren't coming down. It's still gonna be posted as no parking, or resident parking only, okay? So I think that there's gonna be a lag time to post it, or we'll post it as soon as the article is approved. Those signs will then go on the website, those streets will go on the website. It's just a matter of clerically moving it from one column to another column. The residents won't notice any changes at all. Is that fair?
Can I ask a follow-up to that? So if the signs don't come down and it says parking only on this side, or no parking on this side, I guess would be the negative. and there's nothing in the general bylaws, are tickets allowed to be issued if people are parking on the wrong side?
Yes, because the board will have adopted the same list. The proposal is to not change the list. It's taking the list, Schedule A, and having the board adopt it after a public hearing and posting that. Same list.
Yeah.
So I would just recommend that that's clear, because that wasn't clear to me.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Is there further discussion?
Christina has her hand up.
Christina?
We've done this approach in several other towns, this approach and suspender, so why?
Christina
not?
Delicio.
But, and Christina, just a little more slowly, the machine is not picking up your voice very well.
So in other warrant articles in the last few years, we've taken the boots and suspender approach. Why not this time? This seems awfully rushed, but again, it wasn't on an agenda, there was no warrant article published in the paper, as it should be. It seems like there's a lot of mishaps here, and I just don't feel like we're doing the people of this town justice in keeping us informed on exactly why this is being done. I don't see a problem that we're trying to solve here. What I see is my street was once resident only, and there's going to be an in-between time that it's not protected. And I feel like this document should have been established, and we should have two policies in place to keep us protected. I don't feel like you are protecting the residents at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Mary Palermo, 2 Parsons Lane. I have a question. It's my understanding that the reason why we're having a big discussion about parking and tickets and parking permits and like is because when the new permitting system or the new passes were sent out, they were given different instructions from what's written in the bylaws, and people didn't read the instructions that came with their sticker to put it in the front windshield and put it on the back window, which resulted in tickets, which resulted in people complaining, which resulted in now we have to pay people money back because people didn't read the instructions that came with their parking or beach pass, I should say. Is that correct?
That sounds accurate.
Yeah.
Very simplistic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on parking? Excellent. Number 10 is additional parking on Beach Street beyond Tappan Street. Where the article asks for 2 additional spaces. Brian?
Yes, this came about for a variety of different reasons, but ultimately it's a public safety issue. In that, as Reed's Park gets busier and busier with more transient boaters, and with the expansion of Reed's Park coming up, a lot of people, and people coming off the train during the summer, they're crossing the street at the entrance of Harvey's Point. And so we've been reluctant in the past to put a crosswalk there because we will lose a couple of spots. But at this point, I think we will be putting a crosswalk there. We're not sure how many spots we'll lose, depending on
the
sight lines and everything else like that. We could lose up to 2 spots. So all we're trying to do is, we don't want, it's a net sum gain, all right? We're gonna add 2 spots past with beyond Tappan Street. I'm on record saying I wanted 30. Then I was negotiated down to 10, and now I've accepted 2. This is, as I've said, this is not the hill I'm gonna die on, but I do believe that the businesses who are hurting, because there is, there's 5 or 6 weekends a year that we have problems, and I think that the loss of 2 parking spots may impact some of the businesses. So I just want to give them back the 2 spots while we create a public safety, address a public safety issue.
Are there questions? Yes, sir.
Nick Berkowitz, 22 Friend, I think this is an awesome idea. Definitely, people already cross there all the time, so might as well put some lines in the street, to go. My question is more around like the logistics of actually determining where the spots will go. On the other side of the crosswalk at Tappan Street, I cross there a lot. As it is right now, it can be hard for cars, if there's cars parked in all those spots, it can be hard for them to see people waiting at that crosswalk to go from the Mascanoma Park side over to Tappan Street. This will now block it in from both sides. And so I'm just curious, is that something that we would have to talk to the,
I'm not sure exactly. The two crosswalks by Captain Dusty's.
I'm referring to the one that's right at Tappan Street.
Further down, he's talking.
Yeah.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is when you're crossing from the park over to Tappan Street, it can be difficult for cars who are coming towards the beach out of town to see pedestrians waiting there. And I'm curious what the process will be if this is approved, which I'm sure it will be, what the process will be to understand how they determine how to make sure that people are visible, that kind of thing. Is that for pedestrian committee conversation after the fact, or is that part of this conversation?
I mean,
Do
certainly.
you guys understand my question?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
we do. I mean, I think the sightlines is under the professional purview of our DPW. That's their day job. Yeah, but certainly, Bike and Ped is an advisory committee, so we can specifically ask them that question and say, can you, check our math, so to speak, before we, paint the lines. That'd be a good idea.
Becky?
We're not talking about moving the spots that are already there. So the visibility, if you're talking about traffic coming towards the beach, these would be after that.
Yeah, no.
So it's not.
And that's kind of my point, is that you get it from both sides now, the lack of visibility potentially. At least before, people who are coming towards the beach can see the people who are coming away from the beach stop and they see something, so that's kind of, yeah, I understand that.
Mary Palermo, 2 Parsons Lane. Would these be the same 2 spots that were removed about 5 years ago, just for that reason? Would they be putting in the same spot?
I think that we took out
A
about
lot more than
10
that.
Quite a few.
There were a lot more than that.
I'm gonna, Tom Keough,
Yes.
I was the chair of the board. Brian, you might have thought of thinking about 30 because we put in about 25. And then 1 year later, they were voted out. So I would say 2 would be good, and I think stay small at this point. I didn't approve when the residents put in a motion to remove those parking places, because we have public safety people that do that, but and make recommendations on that. But I think the 2 will be good, just to make up for the 2 that are being lost.
Mary?
Again, sorry, Mary Palermo, 2 Parsons Lane. But there was a reason why the parking spaces stopped where they did stop. And I'm not sure if it was because of sight lines, whether it was because of safety, or.
I think this is getting into the range of opinion, and as I said at the beginning, I would like opinions to be heard by the whole of town meeting rather than the smaller group that's here now. And so show up and tell us about that. Ask
Well, no,
us
I'll
about
look
the-
and see if I can find the town meeting where we actually voted on it and why we voted, the way we voted.
Unfortunately, the minutes of town meeting are a little short on why.
But there may be something maybe in one of the town books, the,
Yeah,
I'll go to the library and check.
Pull Tom aside later.
yeah, it was,
Tom is the architect.
Tom, do you remember what year it was?
It was 2006, 16 or
And
something.
then I've been off the board for 6. And
I want to say it was,
it was probably
It was 16.
11 or 12.
It could have been as late as 16, I think, but maybe not.
6.
I think you're right, Ann, I think it was about 2016.
Conley was still Chief Conley was the chief. Right, so when was that?
Yeah, that was.
Because he wrote the memo.
Because there was a bunch taken away one year, and then they added some back by Captain Dusty's up in the front there, and then there was a reason why, I don't remember why, but why they stopped where they did.
If you hang around afterward, I can give you a little history. I don't think it needs to be
Oh,
taken.
okay.
I have looked up. Anything else on parking on Beach Street? Okay, Article 11 is originally the citizens petition asking for the town to either purchase or acquire by eminent domain the property currently occupied by the Manchester Community Center. And I am going to ask you to explain the thinking behind that. As I said at the beginning, the selectmen are putting this forward to avoid a discussion on town meeting floor about what is an appropriate way for a citizen petition to be handled. So please tell us
Thank you.
your story.
Thank you. Patrick Meehan, 384 Summer Street, co-president of the Manchester Community Center. So we originally brought this up as a citizen's petition because we weren't hearing back from Harbor's Point. We were trying to sit down with them and negotiate, but they didn't. So we were forced to think of ideas, and this is the idea that made most sense to us to protect the community center and to preserve the way we bring our services to town. We are a busy building, as we've heard a couple of times tonight where we might not be. There's a lot of things that go on during the day hours and the night hours and even the weekends. So this was the idea we came up with. At the same time, the town came up with their article to extend the lease and work with us, which we appreciate them sitting down and being the middleman to talk with Harbor's Point. At this point, both articles are still on the warrant, obviously, and we are trying to figure out the best way to keep the community center in town and intact as possible.
Thank you. Are there questions?
No hands.
Very clearly, a very clear explanation. Thank you very much. Article 12 asks to add a new section to the bylaws requiring that zoning amendments adopted by town meeting shall not go into effect without a ballot vote. So it would go, the town meeting would approve by whatever majority is required, and then we would have to have an election. And that election, some details that I can't explain, maybe, basically the ballot would have to follow the same majority rule.
The quantum of vote is the same as the town meeting quantum. Okay. Yes.
Is there someone here who is proposing that, who would like to speak? Yes, Morgan.
First, just
First, your name.
Yeah, thank you. Morgan Evans, 20 Boardman Ave, just a citizen. You used the word election, very minor point. Is referendum the better word? I don't know, I'm just asking. When something goes to ballot, that's a question. Just look at the language right for town meeting.
Right, so ballot, the only time we have ballots is at elections.
It would be at the election, but we can work on the language later, but, okay. So whether it's a referendum or election, the question goes to the ballot, just as Chapter 270 from 1991, which is represented at the end of our bylaws. It's a special act by the legislature of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, specific to Manchester by the Sea. That's why it's a special act. My understanding, and there's lawyers who can help all of us out here, is that special acts supersede general acts. And we use this in any case with precedent since 1991 for bonds. When we issue debt greater than 1 million is the current number. It was on the finance board when we raised it to that number. It's of course of great import to all citizens if they have to pay extra taxes for 30 years. Well, the logic extends that if we're gonna make major zoning changes in the future, such as questions around 40A and 40B, which may bring great changes to the value of our homes across the community, that we then go to ballot. So that's the logic.
Minor correction,
Thank you.
40B is outside of zoning.
Okay, 48.
40A,
Referendum
40R.
48. Two good things to keep in mind for town meeting here. We'll work on the language with the right things, yeah. Thank you.
I can say that our town council has said that it's unlikely that the Attorney General will approve that regulation because there is specific law about how zoning articles are approved.
Right, I think
And
the case, when you're ready.
I have a copy of her opinion if you'd like to get it.
I have it
You
electronically.
have it, great.
Yes, and I've reviewed it.
Okay.
So I don't know if you're gonna rule that this is the venue to respond to that. I'm thinking you're not, but
I just want to make sure you have the information.
thank you very much, thank you. I think in there is case law which predates the special act. It's from 1987 versus 1991. And again, special acts supersede general bylaws, or general laws. But also,
Go ahead.
thank you. The plain reading of the article. So at town meeting, we'll hear both sides of that legal issue, but I think, to your chair, it'd be clearer to the town meeting if both sides were heard in some venue before that, and then.
This is the venue before, so.
Well, you've also called a special, select board meeting Saturday morning, for example. I don't know what your agenda is, and I don't know the.
Saturday morning is a meeting called by the moderator.
Okay, thank you.
Who is not on the select board, to his pleasure, I think.
Yeah. Thank you for your service. You guys put a lot of hours in.
No, that's nice. The moderator calls that meeting with the intention of dealing with the mechanics of the town meeting. Who will move which articles, who will speak to which articles. It is not a place to discuss the content of articles. So that meeting is not a place to discuss.
When you're ready.
So I think, Alan, please.
Thank you, and yes, you're entirely correct. What we talk about at the pre-town meeting is strictly procedural issues, not the merits of articles or their legal ramifications. So we won't discuss the contrary opinions of town council versus those who may think that the special act supersedes general laws. But I do encourage everyone to attend who is interested, because sometimes the procedural aspects are important.
Thank you. Tom.
Question. The article, the warrant article that's submitted by the petitioners talks about 1991, chapter 270, section 1, which talks about zoning bylaws, talks about general bylaws only. Then in bold print down here, it talks about no amendment to the zoning bylaw. Is that a rewrite by the petitioners? Or is that a rewrite? In other words, that's not the article that the petitioners did is listed as number 12. And down below it says petitioners move the motion, John Brown, to speak for the select board.
I think it's you, Ann.
You know, I get it. I think I got that one.
Yeah.
Dodged a bullet there.
So it says no amendment to the zoning bylaw shall be valid unless the
That's still
motion
loaded.
calling for the amendment shall be adopted by a vote on a printed ballot at a town election after full opportunity for debate. So in other words, is that a rewrite by town council? Is that a rewrite by the petitioners? Where did that come from?
As, great.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Morgan, but I thought that was the language that you had agreed to
With Alan
with Alan.
Wilson.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the bold,
That's the actual motion.
okay.
Alan's hand.
All right, so let me just talk, sorry, Alan, go ahead, speak.
Yes, Alan, Alan knows,
Thank you.
yes.
I helped the petitioners, as I often do, with their motion. I submitted it to town council, and this motion is the agreed-on motion that town council has approved.
So this is the, you don't have my piece of paper, but there's a first section which references the 1991 Act, and then there's one in bold that simply says, that mentions a vote on a printed ballot. Is the vote on a printed ballot is the one that you recommend?
On a printed ballot at the town election, at a town election.
So the Article 12, that's not in bold, that says to add to the general bylaws, of the town of Manchester by the Sea, et cetera. That was the submitted petition.
Copy, yeah.
That was the wording of the submitted petition. And then the petitioners, in working with Alan and town council, worked on the actual motion, which you see in bold.
And the motion will be to add a new section, Article 20, to Article 2 of the general bylaw, reading the language that you just read.
So what it looks like to me is that if we're moving the town, in Article 1, we're moving the town meeting back to the last Monday in April. You have to have 35 days after that election, after that town meeting adjourns, to be able to have, so in other words, you'd be having this in the early part of June. And then in the fall, if someone were to put a zoning, if this were to pass, then you'll get my opinion on Monday evening. If this were to pass, then you would have to wait until the next election, or are we gonna have a separate election just to vote on one zoning bylaw that might get promulgated at a special town meeting? So in other words, it's, so
Okay,
it just,
if I can summarize what I think you've said, is typically we have an election after the annual town meeting where
Yeah.
we elect board members and
we don't after the special.
we don't after the special.
Yeah.
And the ballot is, as you say, some weeks after in the annual town meeting. So
Then I guess my last question, just to make people think about it, is there has to be some type of explanation about this on the ballot, or do you list out the entire write-up of what the new zoning regulation is? For example, the town report last year was 18 pages longer than the previous town report because of the zoning regulations that were taken up or not taken up at town meeting. So in other words, you could have.
I think you've made your point clear,
Thank you.
and Alan has his hand up again, and perhaps he can help.
Thank you, Ann. I don't have the special act in front of me, but my recollection is that it specifies a time frame within which the special election, or within which the election has to take place following the town meeting, at which a vote is taken to put something on the ballot. So I think the answer to Tom's question is yes, there would have to be a special election. I just say I don't have it in front of me, and I'll try to confirm that.
So just for clarification, Madam Chair, a special election would only have to be conducted if the proposed zoning change occurred at fall town meeting, right? Because
Yes.
it's the change occurred at Springtown meeting, we're having an election after that, okay.
Right, but to Tom's point,
The timing.
The gap.
the ballot would have to be prepared prior to the actual vote.
Yep.
So you, and if at the annual town meeting, the proposed zoning was defeated, there would be a ballot that is basically on the election. ballot.
But I think Tom is also right that if there were a zoning amendment approved at a special town meeting in the fall, there would need to be a special election following it in order to comply with the special act. But, as I say, I don't have it in front of me, I'll try to confirm that.
I think it's 60 days, I'm gonna find it here momentarily.
Well, that'll save me doing it tomorrow.
I think it also describes the form of the question on the ballot.
It does, and requires a summary of the proposal. It doesn't have to have the full language.
So it's kind of like the state, what Galvin sends out
Yes.
to us with the summary.
The red books. Let me get this bigger so I can read it. Small print. Yeah, the election is held not less than 30, not more than 60 days after the town meeting vote. And then,
And
yes,
just to go back to Morgan's initial question, I think the correct terminology is election, not referendum.
Thank you.
Morgan,
So, Morgan, 20 Boardman Ave, citizen. So, I know, it's just as logistically, the question that another person asked. From Article 9, there's already an example of a outline and then a hyperlink to
Yes.
what I looked at as a couple of pages on the town site, because of course that would not fit on Article 9 either. So the idea that, which is also brought up elsewhere, that it would be cumbersome, clearly has precedence of how it's handled elegantly.
in the case of I'm looking at yes, in the case of Article 9, there will be a handout at town meeting with that full explanation. So,
Very good, and likewise.
and any place else where the warrant is different from the motion,
Abbreviated.
from the motion, there will be handouts. And are there any other questions on requiring that zoning changes be verified but at a town election? I think we may have killed that one too. Okay. Article 13. Asks that we apply the dictates of Article 97 of the Massachusetts Constitution to the parcels that make up the Powder Hill Reservation. At the time, no, actually this one's correct. The select board discussed that at our meeting last night and agreed that the town council said that with 98% certainty, it's all already under 97, and the town meeting at the select board meeting last night, we said, well, what's the harm in making it 100%? So the select board will support this article. And the intention of the article, if I may paraphrase, is to be sure that the land that is sort of Manchester's Central Park won't be turned into anything else. And the Constitution, the Massachusetts Constitution makes it very difficult to turn land that's under Article 97. You have to have a town meeting vote, you have to have 100% vote of the Conservation Commission, you have to have, and then it has to go to the legislature, and both houses of the legislature have to approve it. So we will get to keep, no one will be able to take Powder House Hill away without enormous effort. Are there any, wait. So, yes.
Nate Berkowitz, 22 Friend. Just a question about language. It says including parcels. Are there any other parcels that are included in this other than the ones that are listed?
No.
The question, when you say included in this motion, that's correct. There are other parcels on Powder House.
Yeah, no, but it just says, it could be interpreted, it says including parcels identified, list them. It could be interpreted that there are others that are included in.
Just these four.
Great, thank you.
Are there further questions? Okay. The last article asks to authorize the selectmen to convey land owned by the town to a private charitable corporation. And I think I'd ask John, or John.
Yeah, I can comment, Ann, and we do not support this particular comment. As Ann had said earlier with regard to Article 13, the protections offered under 97, Article 97 from the state are really pretty rigorous. It's very, very hard to change anything. And this would just remove really ownership of the town for these particular parcels. And it would be impossible for the town to do anything at any time ever, 50 years, 1,000 years. There's nothing that can be done. So we feel that giving up ownership for what would be a very, very small incremental strength and protection does not make sense here. So for that reason, we feel that the Article 97 protections are certainly more than enough to cover Powder House's use as a conservation.
Alan.
Thank you, Ann. The most recent iteration of this, which I received, I think, today, the proponents are now proposing not a conveyance of the fee simple interest in Powder House Hill, but simply conveyance of a conservation restriction. And Town Council has reviewed that motion, and the proponents have accepted Town Council's comments.
And what are the comments?
Okay, that's. What is the difference between Article 13 and Article 14 at this point, Mr. Evans?
One's to Article 97 at the state level, and the other one is reading from the bold perpetual conservation restriction, which would be held by a third party charitable trust. So 97, so there's no, in the final motion that has referred, there's no request to give up the deed, rather, as with lots of conservation trusts you see, the third party is what monitors that some 50 years from now, or whatever the case is.
I believe that is currently held, the conservation portion is handled by our town conservation commission.
Correct. So the care, custody, management of Powder House was given to the Conservation Commission by voters in 1977.
And it is in fact that measure or that activity that town council looked at and said that in effect is in concert with Article 97. And therefore, Article 97 really would govern what's going on with these parcels. So I'm trying to understand with regard to the Article 14 here, you've modified the comments a little bit, and you've said, no, you don't want to transfer the deed, you just want to somehow, well, you tell me.
Have the monitoring party be a third party rather than an element of the town.
And I
Why?
guess the question is why? Have we screwed up in the last 50 years?
I'm not accusing you of anything.
No, I'm just
please.
curious. I'm curious.
No, I mean, why? What is the motivation?
So to my understanding, it is the highest level of protection that can be had under our local and state laws. And very well summarized, it's our central park in town. And it's definitely belts and suspenders for future generations. It's not about necessarily anybody in this room, it's about the future.
I think we're getting,
Yeah.
I think we now understand what this says, that the petitioners would like to see a private entity hold the conservation easement rather than the Conservation Commission of the town. Okay?
Well, it wouldn't be instead of the Conservation Commission. The Conservation Commission would still have the management on behalf of the town. But any future change, in addition to all the protections provided under Article 97, any future change would require the consent of the private entity holding the conservation restriction.
So in simplest terms, it adds another layer of review and monitoring.
And enforcement.
Yes.
Monitoring and enforcement 50, 100 years now.
Yeah.
It's the highest level it can be done. And we see that in various places around the town and the state.
Can we have examples?
I'll give it to you on the floor.
Yeah, can you give us examples, Mr.
I want to make.
I can
Yeah,
give
no.
a few. The land, much of the land around Shingle Place Hill is town land that is in a conservation easement with the Manchester Essex Conservation Trust. It's current, people often say that it's owned by the Conservation Trust, but in fact, much of it is owned by the town and is under the protection of the Conservation Trust. So this does happen, but there's a question behind your question, and I'd like to hear it.
The question behind my question is that we have a conservation commission who is a town entity, and letting them control town-owned property seems to make a lot more sense than some outside organization and people, and I'm a member of the Manchester Essex Conservation Trust, but having that done by the town group owning and having control over town land makes a lot more sense to me than to let someone else.
Let's let the town meeting hear all of this.
Okay.
I hear and understand what you're saying.
Now that the question's been changed, do we have to look at this again, or do we revise our vote?
You commented on that very briefly last night. And felt that, still felt it best to keep it under 100% town.
Yeah.
Right.
So, okay, I just want to make sure that we don't have to.
But obviously you can revisit it. You have up until Monday town meeting to finalize your position.
So right now, it's town-owned and town-managed. And this is suggesting that it's not only town-owned and town-managed, but there's a third party. I don't know who that third party is. I don't know if it's other people in town, other people in Cape Ann, other people in Washington. I don't know where this
Well,
is.
who comes up with who that might be?
Yes.
Yeah, so recently, this was done when you purchased Christian Hill. So that was a recent purchase of the town through an initiative of the Conservation Commission. And in that case, a third party, MECT, is holding the conservation restriction on it. So that's an example recently where this was done. It's As Morgan suggested, sort of that belt and suspender approach.
But again, there's no guarantee as to who's going to be holding that conservation restriction.
Mr. Evans.
The purpose, it says that you get to make that decision. It's
Right.
our trust in you to make the right decision. As you've done before with Shingle Hill and et cetera.
So clarifying question.
Yes, of course.
So this article, if it passes, it authorizes us to do this, but we would have to take a vote, and we may vote not to do this.
Correct.
So it authorizes but doesn't require.
Correct. Town meeting can't direct the select board to act, it can only authorize you to act. Obviously, if people are unhappy with your follow through or lack of follow through, then that's what the elections are for. So. That's the construct.
Ms. Foley.
Hi, Mary Foley, 1 Pulaski Drive. 2 questions. My understanding is there are parcels in Powder House that are owned by these third entities already. I believe MECT actually maintains the actual Powder House building. So just asking for clarity on that. And then my second question is, has the town ever taken land out of Chapter 97?
I'm not aware of any lands that have been taken out of 97 in town. I'm not aware of that history, but I don't believe so.
No.
Not in my history.
Yeah. And METC does own one of the parcels that comprise Powder House. It's not the one that includes the pipe stand or the Powder House building itself. It's another parcel a little further north. But yes, they do own what I call the 5th large parcel. That makes up a couple of very tiny squares of land that make up Powder House. That I think there's 2 small squares, one for the old standpipe and one for the actual Powder House. And those were not included in the article, in the
Mr.
petition.
Wilson.
Thank you. I've only been moderator for 28 and a half years, but I don't recall during my tenure we've ever taken land out of Article 97 conservation.
I think Tom trumps you in years of town involvement.
But not running town meetings. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
He certainly trumps me in years of service, though.
Is that a thank you, no thank you?
I should like measure of wood.
I could be.
At one time.
If there are no other questions on Article 14,
Sarah Pierce has her.
Sarah Pierce, okay, please.
Hi, thank you, Sarah Pierce, 9 Front Street. I'm not super familiar with Article 97, but I just wanted to know under that, I'm assuming that nothing like a cell tower could be placed up on Powder House Hill if it's protected under Article 97. Is that the case?
In essence, yes.
In essence or in?
Well, so again, Article 97 lands that are subject to Article 97 can undergo a change in use, but it's a very arduous process. And the statute spells out what that process is. It includes a 2/3 vote of the voters in town. It includes a unanimous vote of the Conservation Commission. It includes a 2/3 vote of both houses of the state legislature. It includes approval of a couple of state agencies. It typically includes new lands being protected at a 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 ratio. So for every acre you want to take out of Article 97, typically the state will require 2 or 3 new acres to be permanently preserved. So that's a quick summary of the requirements to undergo a change in lands that are subject to Article 97.
Okay, yeah, just, we're pretty much direct abutters of Powder House, and I know back in like 2000, I want to say 14, a large cell tower was proposed to go up on Powder House Hill, and I don't remember Article 97 being brought up, and it was quite a grassroots effort to get that project turned down. So I'm trying to understand like what is allowed, and I guess Article 14, to me as a resident, makes a lot of sense to have that additional layer of protection, because nothing at all in any disrespect to the town, but towns may have different interests in land than conservation commissions. So that would be my only comment on Article 14, that to have that added layer of protection would be helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Wilson, do you remember the cell tower? I think would have been in your regime.
I remember it came up, I don't remember the resolution of it or whether it even got to town meeting.
I have a
There
question.
was a discussion.
There was.
Yeah.
It did not advance very far. It was on one of those postage stamp parcels. Though I forget which one. There are two postage stamp parcels that make up Powder House, outside of these four that are mentioned here. And the tower idea was floated. It did not have a long life.
So question, I mean, there was public safety telecommunications up there for a while.
Correct.
But it's in one of those spots?
Correct.
Okay, so it was outside of the carve out
Correct.
in these areas. I mean, it's no longer there.
Right.
Jim Starkey has his hand up.
Mr. Starkey?
Yes, I was the
Address,
chairman.
please.
Jim Starkey, 13 Tux Point Road, Manchester. When I was chairman of the town's Electronic Infrastructure Advisory Committee, there was discussion about whether it was a suitable site. No carrier ever expressed any interest whatsoever in putting something up on Powder House Hill.
Thank you. Are there?
Sarah.
Hi, I'd just like to rebut Mr. Starkey's comments because of the location where we live and being at.
Point of order.
I'm sorry, Becky, you have to let the public speak at some point. There was VTech technology.
Sarah, this was
very
told,
high.
said at the very beginning of the meeting that this meeting was to discuss the articles, not
Okay.
the
But
merits or anything else.
Mr. Starkey's comment was not about the article. I just want to point that out. Thank you.
You have both your comments saying that you organized a neighborhood group to stop this idea, and Mr. Starkey's comment that it was considered and rejected are in the record, and anyone who has the patience to watch this will hear both of your points of view, and we will, in preparing to discuss this article, if this comes up, we will have all of the facts. Thank you. Anyone else? Anything else? In that case,
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
ready for a vote?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Becky? Yes. Brian?
Yes.
You don't have to hold up the page, I know what your name is. Kathy? Yes. Ann says yes.
John, yes.
And thank you, everyone who stayed to listen to all of this. It's what makes a small town work, is people who pay attention and ask questions and come up with ideas. And you've done your share. Thank you.